Welcome, everybody. This is our third session in our summer webinar series around data. We're happy to have you here today. I'm Holly Phillips. I'm with the Utah Afterschool Network, and we're also here with Lisa. Do you want to take a minute and introduce yourself, Lisa?
Hi, everybody. This is Lisa Wisham from the Utah Education Policy Center. Welcome back. The fact that we're here for a third session means we are one step closer to summer, which is exciting.
It is right around the corner, and we couldn't be more happy to be here with our third session, helping you all prepare for summer. So with that, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat, if you want to tell us your name, organization, and city. And if I could see somebody with show me a thumbs up, can you still see my presentation up on the screen? Yeah, perfect. All right, so we will introduce ourselves in the chat, and we'll also get our brains warmed up and ready to think about summer planning with a fun little survey question. So if you're not too familiar with Slido, you can take your phone and take a picture of the QR code to bring up this short survey, or you can go to Slido, slido.com, and put in the numbers 641019, and that should also bring it up. We're curious, right? Because definitely it's all about summer, and this in particular is an exciting summer. Thinking hopefully we'll all be able to get out a little bit more than we were able to last year. So we want to know, what is your preferred summer destination? Is it mountains? Is it going to the beach? Is it hanging out in the desert, checking out a lake, or hanging out poolside? I was thinking initially when I put this survey together that we were going to get a lot of mountain folk, but you guys could surprise me for sure. Seeing right now we're half and half, mountains, lake. Oh, somebody's clocking in for the beach.
Yes,
Nice.
beach.
No takers on desert so far. No one wants to get in some really hot weather. The desert's perfect in the winter time. That's what I like to do. But awesome. Looks like we have beach in the lead, and then mountains and lake, all really great destinations. Thank you all for having some fun with us. Now for a little bit more serious, we also want to know, what is keeping you up at night as we move into summer 2021? What are those things that are on your mind for this summer? It could be something that you haven't quite planned and figured out yet. It could be maybe some of the funding just isn't quite in place yet. What is it? Staffing. I have heard that one quite a bit in the last 2 weeks of meetings I've been in. Staffing is huge.
Susie, weeping myself to sleep at night. Oh.
I'm guessing being and staying organized, that's a huge one.
Yeah.
I sometimes, my brain will want to do its organizing when I'm trying to go to sleep. So I'll have to tell myself, save that for the morning. Field trip safety and risk management. That one.
That's a good one.
That's a really good one. Transportation, time management.
I was seeing on the news this morning, the national news, that there is a lifeguard shortage. Like things that we have not witnessed before we're experiencing this year. Staffing across the board, in all different resort industries. So staffing is a huge problem in all organizations.
Perfect. All right. And Lisa, I'm gonna stop sharing. If you want to take over and start sharing, that would work. And for everybody, thank you so much for your input. We're going to talk a little bit about where we've been with these sessions. We're going to get into the content for this third session. And then at the end, we're going to loop back and really try to dive in and have a group brainstorm around some of the things that you wrote that are keeping you up or making you weep at night. Maybe we can help you save a few tears, do some great collective brainstorming.
All right. Thanks, Holly. Can everybody see my screen now? All right. So just as a recap, for those of you that might be new to this summer series or this summer prep series, what we've been trying to do is build a cohort of professionals as you're planning successful outcome-driven summer programs. We are using the continuous improvement cycle framework, which I'll show you to refresh your memory in just a minute. We're using that framework to guide all of our discussions and decisions related to your summer programming. And we're also helping design programs using that framework, including SMART goals, activities and services based on the needs, intentional data collection, which we talked about last time. And this time, our focus is really going to be on how to intentionally reflect and make those really critical adjustments based on your summer data. So that's going to be the topic this time. And we're hoping to get some great discussions going, or at the very least, give you some tools and some ways of thinking about your data this summer. Before we move on, as Holly mentioned, this is the third in a 4-part series. We're going to give you a little break from us while you hold your summer programs, collect your data, and then we'd love to see you back here on August 3rd, just to share. No pressure. You don't have to prepare anything in advance, but we'd love to have everybody join us to say, here's how I use some of the tools, here's how I thought about data differently, and here are the data we collected. Remember, this data can be so pivotal as federal and state funds are being shared for the purposes of out of school time programs next year. You can really use this summer data to say to your stakeholders, our program's making a difference for kids and families. So join us on August 3rd. If you have any questions leading up to it, reach out to us. Holly and I think, I don't want to speak for Holly. I think Holly and I will be around all summer. So let us know how we can support you. This is just a review. The reason that we are doing this summer workshop is that we believe every system is perfectly designed to get the results it gets. That's not to say that there aren't going to be some tweaks and some changes that can be made along the way. But if we're intentional and we set this up in a way that that follows the continuous improvement cycle, we think that we can achieve our outcomes that we establish early on. And here is the continuous improvement cycle that we've been talking about for the last couple of months. For those that haven't seen this before or haven't seen it very often, it starts with looking at your needs assessment and your needs assessment data, talking with your stakeholders about those needs and thinking about the vision for your summer program, designing your program based on the needs of your students and families. And as you're designing the program, really thinking about what data you're going to collect for each of your outcomes. Last time we spent some time talking about qualitative versus quantitative data and which would be more helpful, or a combination of both. So once you have the data that you're going to collect and you're implementing your program services, collect that data. And what we're going to talk about today is carving out some time, whether your summer program is 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, how do you carve out some time to look at your data and kind of do that progress monitoring? Like, what are the data telling us? And if we keep on this path with these services and doing things the way we have been, will we achieve our outcomes, or do we need to make some minor course corrections along the way? We spent some time two sessions ago, I believe, talking about SMART goals. Just as a reminder, as you're thinking about your SMART goals and probably have them already developed for your summer programs, make sure they're specific, direct, meaningful, that the outcome is measurable, that you can track progress, not just at the end, but on your journey this summer, that you can do some interim measurement and goal tracking. They have to be realistic, relevant. This is really important. We want to make sure that your outcomes that you have go back to meet the needs of your students and families. And then time bound. For this, it'll be pretty straightforward. You're looking at the end of your summer program to see what that outcome is. Holly gave this great visual last time, things to consider. And we just wanted to remind you again that looking at your summer goals, thinking about the quality tool and where your program is on the quality tool, how you are aligning with the school day. And we have some tools on the Afterschool website, the UAN website. Thinking about community and family input, how can you be intentional and get that input from families and community partners? And then also keeping in mind the funding requirements, because a lot of programs rely on external funding sources, and those funders have requirements. So how can you stay committed to what you want to do but also be flexible and make sure that you're meeting those funding requirements? Last time, as I mentioned, we talked about the quantitative data that you might be collecting this summer, such as attendance, pre and post survey data. You might be looking at the students' end of year Acadience scores and comparing them to the fall Acadience scores to see if you were able to stop any of the summer learning slides. Surveys are also a good source of data. Student tracking, we spent a lot of time talking about how students can really take ownership of those outcomes and do the tracking and the data collecting for you. And then we talked about qualitative data, informal observations, informal discussions with family members, talks with students, a student work portfolio, and also some observations of student behavior. Okay, now let me pause. I'm going to pause real quick and see if there's any questions or anything that you want to bring up before we talk about summer adjustments. Some of you have still been working on your SMART goals or thinking about what data you're going to collect for each of your outcomes. Anybody want to share anything or give us an update on progress?
So I have a question.
Yeah.
One of the areas that we're going to collect data in is reading fluency and comprehension. So the only question, for the most part, we have about 65 kids that'll be attending daily in our summer program. But some of those youth attending are going to be just coming for a week.
Okay.
It's not very many, but how does their data, or do I not even include those kids that aren't going to be there longer than 30 days, say? We're running our program for 9 weeks.
Okay, so 9 weeks, but you have a small group of students, James, that are only going to be there for about a week.
Correct.
Okay, so I think that I would suggest not putting them in with the same 90-day or category or 30-day category students, keeping them separate and thinking, going back to our discussions about what are the outcomes that you want to see for those kiddos in that week. And it might be a smaller a smaller objective. It might be something very different, but regarding reading proficiency, fluency, what would you like them to show as progress that week? Maybe it's reading for pleasure, and maybe they're tracking their reading, both at program and at home, and maybe have a separate outcome, but also a separate data set for them if it's not too much trouble.
Right. We were thinking of doing some kind of dibble testing and for them, but but that is completely different than what we're doing for the rest of the camp. So
yeah, and it's tricky because you want to be careful with what you can realistically achieve in a week.
Right.
You can go to a lot of trouble to do the Acadience testing and to work with teachers to get that set up, but will you see a lot of growth in 1 week that you can say our program made a difference in those 5 days? So
Right.
that's the tricky thing too. So I think you might be limited a little bit more towards some qualitative data based on your activities that you're doing with the kids.
Yeah, we do have other things that we're going to be collecting data on that are required for our grants that we're using. So, and we certainly, I think, can find a way to include that data for those areas.
That's a great point. I think, James, sorry, I'm letting my dogs out. They were asleep when I got on this call, so sorry. I think that, well, I want to open it up to everybody else. What does everyone else think? Any suggestions for James, or have you encountered this before with your summer programs and having students that are just there for a limited time? James, I'm wondering, are there certain things, like, do you have certain things planned for those students for that week? Or are they going to integrate into the activities that the other students will already be doing? Is it at the beginning of the summer that they'll be there, or the end, or just in the middle? Can you give us a little bit more information?
For the most part, we're seeing those youth attend like around week 3. And then in July for a couple weeks, different kids for a couple weeks. Like I said, there's not many. There's quite a few kids that are on a waiting list, but so for the most part, if the youth is enrolled, they're coming the whole summer. But it's just here and there that some parents were able to get their kids in for a week or so.
Yeah.
So
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, this is Mariah, and I actually have the same, or I guess maybe a similar question, and I'm really just kind of listening because I don't have a strong set of what we want our goals to be or how to measure for our summer program. Ours is 3 days a week, and my youth are they only had to commit to a week at a time. So I have some kids that are going for all 6 weeks, but I have lots of kids that are only going for 1 or 2, so how do I, what do I track in order to have good data for that? And I think that's kind of the same question that James was asking. And basically I'm saying I have no idea. So if you guys have ideas, if someone else has an idea, I would really appreciate it.
Mariah, it sounds like what might be helpful for you is is your primary focus academics? Is it social, emotional, healthy relationships?
We honestly are split, right down the middle. So
Okay.
we're doing STEM stuff every day. So we're adding that STEM base, and then there's a social, emotional each week. We are doing reading with the kids every day, as well as math with them every day. So it's really kind of includes the whole gamut.
You know what might be kind of interesting to do is develop a very simple, brief student survey. And the survey can include each of, questions about each of the components, whether it's enrichment, academics, STEM, a question for each. And then maybe, and James, this might work for you too, give it to the students every Friday. And then you can separate out the ones that have been there a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, the whole time. The point is, you don't want to compare the students that you don't want to lump in the students that have been there a week with the students that have been there 6 weeks for the data, because what we want to, I'm assuming what we want to show is that dosage matters, right? So maybe if you see your student surveys show this much data for week 1, but yet for week 6, they're here on their student responses. You can show that, and that might get you some traction for program next year, or to say to parents and guardians, the more that your students are here, the more impact it'll have on them.
I just wanted to add to that, Lisa. I love that idea. I was kind of thinking on the same lines of doing like somehow having it tracked week by week, and then you can track the variance. And I just love what you're saying about, you can show based on the data, like, if you're having 50 kids compared to, 1 week where you only have 20 kids, and then you can compare maybe holiday weeks
Right.
and see kind of difference. So you can actually gain a lot of different data too from that. I think that's a great idea, Lisa.
Thanks, Kristen. I think the key is keeping it super simple and manageable, because it does get more complicated when you're looking at data sets based on a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and so on. So James and Mariah, I'd love to talk more with you about this and get a little bit more detail. And then maybe, if you want to contact me, we could set up another call, and I can help you think about those real brief student surveys that you might want to set up. I think that would be the most bang for your buck, getting data from the short timers this summer. Great questions. You guys have really thought this through. This is great.
I love that, Lisa. And I can't help but think too that it could always be coupled. I think another potential like low-hanging fruit piece could be on the qualitative side, having the kids do some student work portfolios. So then that would really showcase too, like, here are some of the portfolio examples from a student who went the full 9 weeks of programming. Here are a few from 1 week. So you could have kind of comparing the similar thing, but sort of having their work, and maybe coupling that with having the students help track some of their own progress.
Right.
I think could really help too.
Absolutely. Take some of that burden off of you and have the students track their progress, because you all have enough to do this summer. We know that. So that's a great reminder, Holly. And again, if anybody wants to talk through some specifics about their program and kind of problem solve, we'd love to have you join us. So just let us know and we could set up a call. Okay, any other comments or questions before we kind of jump into a new thought process around thinking through our data and how to make those adjustments? Anybody else struggling with either SMART goals or what data to collect around the goals? Okay. All right, I'll go back and share. And I lost there we go. Okay, I had to put, Holly did a cool jam board for us, and I don't want to show my age too much, but is there anybody on the call that remembers jams from the 80s? No one? So these up in the top right corner are jams. There, you can see the tag, it says jams. These, oops. Sorry. They are authentic and they were all the rage. And I think you can still get them if you're interested. The most important thing to remember about jams is the louder, the more colorful, the better. You want the most vibrant jams out there. And I definitely just aged myself because nobody knows what I'm talking about, but Google them. They were the hit growing up in Virginia in the late 80s. So that's your history lesson for today.
Lisa, we do have some folks in the chat who
Oh,
said they remember, so you're not alone.
Oh, good. Who are my friends that can empathize with the jams? Kate. Oh, yes, Mariah. That's awesome. All right. I wish I still had some jams. That's kind of a bummer. But when I think of summer, we were all rocking the jams.
I feel like I need some jams to go and work on a jam board. I see your connection there.
Yes. That's why I brought him up. So we're going to switch over to a jam board, and this is an opportunity for you to start thinking. We know that you might not have the answers to these questions yet, but as you're meeting with your teams this summer, remember, the important thing is to do it regularly. So don't wait until the end of the summer to say, let's take a look at our data that we collected and see how we're doing. If you're doing those student surveys every Friday, at least every other Friday, pull them out and say, are we making a difference? Are we moving that dial? And if not, what do we need to do to pivot and to make some adjustments? So the first thing you're going to think about is, what do I know right now, May 26th? What do I know about my programming this summer? What do I have in place? What questions are still pending? A lot of you said staffing is still pending, field trips, risk management. Those are the things keeping you up at night. So we're going to have you like organize on the jam board. What do you know? What's still pending? What strategies and outcomes am I committed to this summer no matter what? So what is locked in terms of services, strategies, outcomes that you want to remember? We did that visualization a couple months ago where if you look to August and it's August 25th and you are talking to some teachers and administrators at the school where your students attend, and they say to you, well, how'd your program do this summer? How'd the kids do? What do you want to share with them? What outcomes do you want to say to that principal or to those teachers? We know our summer program made a difference because of this. And then finally, what strategies or outcomes are you open to change throughout the summer? Is there a little more flexibility with some that if you're looking through the data that you're collecting and you're not seeing the data move the way you had anticipated, can you pivot a little? Can you be a little flexible? What are those outcomes or strategies that you can say, we need to regroup? We still have 6 weeks left or 4 weeks left. What can we make some adjustments on? So Holly, could you put the link to the Jamboard in the chat box for us?
Yep, it's in the chat for you guys. And when you get your Jamboard, our Jamboard open, you should see on your left-hand side a little toolbar. The first one being a pen. You'll see down to right in the middle, the fourth icon down looks like a little sheet of paper with some scribbles. If you click on that, that's the sticky note feature. I thought we could go ahead and create sticky notes and place them. We'll work through the first 2 questions. We'll give you some time to work through that, and then we'll move on to our second set of questions. And in the meantime, if you have any questions about how to navigate Jamboard, definitely don't be shy. Don't be afraid to ask.
Is anybody having trouble accessing the Jamboard? Okay.
Perfect.
To be good. Nothing is set in stone that you put on here, so don't worry that we know it's fluid, we know it can change. We're just trying to walk you through this process so that you can go into the summer more prepared and more ready to make those adjustments. So don't hesitate to put ideas down, even if they're not solid.
A couple other things you can keep in mind. This document that we have up for this recorded session, your responses are anonymous. So this is also helping us capture this idea so that folks who are going back or for the first time watching this recording could sort of follow along. Our idea with this is that you could take this model either in a Jamboard, in your jams, or in an Excel document, on a Google Doc. Keep a running tab with your staff. If you remember back to the first session, I really emphasized this notion of our summer plans don't need to be a secret. Our staff can really be let into, here's our end goal, here's our midsummer goal, and they can really be with you on this journey. And again, I know at the beginning, people brought up staffing, retention ideas. I think this will really help. It gives your staff buy-in, right? They really understand the why behind your program and can feel that investment. So this is really almost meant to be a team building type activity that you carry throughout the summer as well, where you're really helping your staff see and buy in to the summer program.
That's a great point, Holly. We also recognize that we don't have a ton of program folks on with us this morning, and that's okay. Our point was not that we would do this exercise completely. Like Holly said, it's best done with your teams. And so we'll just practice a little bit, get some initial thoughts down, and then help you all think through, James, Susie, Mariah, how can I take this back and do this with my teams to make sure we're transparent and we're all on the same page?
Especially with the second question right now that we're working on of what questions are still pending. However frequent you have staff meetings, maybe this can be built into your agenda. You have this running log and you bring it back up and you're able to present out to your staff. We had this pending question. I finally got an answer from our funders or from the school district or whoever it may be who is helping you answer that pending question. You can really show your staff too that you're with them through this process. You had questions, concerns. I'm working on the back end trying to get answers given to you in real time.
These are great questions.
Mm-hmm.
COVID protocols. How do we transition in a safe way? SMART goals are solidified. Nice. How and when do we implement our prevention lessons and activities? That's a good one. I love these Jamboards too, because when you're working with your teams on these questions, you can add to the sticky notes, who's going to follow up on this? We've identified problems or questions, but who's responsible, who can take that past the finish line for us. So you might be able to delegate some of those to do some more investigation and come back and report out. Great. Take a look at the other two questions as well and see if you have any thoughts or comments or reflections before we turn you loose and take these back to your teams. Do the questions make sense, and do they sound like they would be helpful to dialogue with your teams about? How's everybody doing? Do you want some more time to work on the Jamboard? Do you feel like this would be a tool that you could take back and meet with your team leading up to summer starting? James and Mariah, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I was wondering if you might want to share an example of how this spring with your AQI grant, if there was a way, if you have an example of how you looked at your data and had to pivot, you looked at your data or lack of data maybe and said, we don't know how we're progressing on our outcomes, or we're not seeing the progress that we wanted to make, so we need to make a little adjustment. Do you have any examples that you want to share?
I don't mind sharing, and I apologize for not having my my camera on. I'm beyond multitasking right now,
That's
but
okay. Totally get it.
I would say what our goals were, we just kind of actually had to shift our goals. We were really focusing on just general social emotional learning. And so we weren't really honing in on the things that they specifically were lacking, I guess. And so we did a more specific pre-test in order to really see what they needed to work on the most. And it was very obviously their like reactions to negative behavior of other students is really specifically what it was, and how they reacted. And so we were able to set up a whole nother, I don't know, we adjusted our lessons, we adjusted how we were tracking it, and then we did a post test, and the results were huge. I was actually even surprised at what an outcome it created. So yes, we definitely had to adjust and reassess, and which was great because the outcome was really good for the kids.
Great. Mariah, that's a great example. Thank you for sharing. You know, over a 3 or 4 month span, you and your team looked at your outcomes and said, we are casting that net so wide, and we're not going to see the progress that we're hoping for, because what we need to do is really be laser focused with what we want to see. So they took that social emotional learning, the healthy relationships, and said, what specifically are we trying to do and help our students do? And once they got laser focused and chose 1 or 2 behaviors that they were tracking, they saw, like Mariah said, they saw the data move like crazy. So I especially want to caution you over summer. It's easy to cast that net wide, but you're only talking about, you know, between 6 and 9 weeks. And so if your outcomes are too lofty, if you're not focused and specific on those SMART goals, be real specific on what you're trying to achieve, they can get away from you. And so I really appreciate you bringing that up, because it's so critical in the summer to be specific and focused. Any other thoughts or reflections before we finish up and celebrate the start of summer programming season?
Well, real quick, I just wanted to kind of piggyback on what Mariah was saying. We kind of did the same thing initially with our pre-test. Like you were saying, the net was so wide, it went over something like 20 questions. So, and we did see an increase in the positive behavior with our post-test, but in the process, in between, we will now focus more specifically on what we can take a look at a pre-test and kind of look at what we want to be focused on. And that's what we ended up doing. And I think moving forward, we're going to tweak our pre-test initially. So it's not as wide, and we can get more specific from the very beginning. And then with our nutrition component, we kept going back and twisting that, especially because it was the youth that were collecting their own data. And what I thought it might look like at the beginning of all of this, the idea was that, can the youth identify different components of nutrition using my plate? But what we started to find was we aren't even providing a balanced snack. So the data showed that once we started adjusting it, and at the end of the data collection period, the kids could identify pretty much everything that they were given, and two, they were getting a more well-rounded snack or meal. So that was interesting. I didn't really think about that. so that was really cool. And now we can move forward with our nutrition component in a more healthier way.
Yes. Thank you, James. And you brought up a really great point. As you're reviewing your data every week, every other week this summer, pay attention to the data that you are collecting by accident, like, is our snack balanced? You weren't thinking along those lines, but you started picking up on that. And so pay attention to the things that you might be collecting or noticing, even when that wasn't your intentional outcome. Yes, Kristen, it's awesome when you start working on improving one thing and it starts to improve others as well. So great. Well, as you go back, just as a reminder, you have these conversations with your teams. If you get stuck on this process, please contact Holly and I. We certainly don't want to not hear from you over the summer. We thought long and hard about whether to continue these monthly gatherings during the summer, and we just felt like it would be so cumbersome on you all because you have so many things happening while you're running quality programs. So we didn't want to impose, but we certainly want you to know at any time we are available if you want to set up a call, a quick meeting, chat over email or text, whatever works for you all. But we are definitely here for you, as are the entire team of UAN out of school time specialists that are joining us today. Chaz, Kristen, Pat, Savannah. So we're so glad that you all are a part of this.
Lisa, I wonder, it looks like we still have a couple minutes. So to revisit the question from the start of this session, asking about what's keeping you up at night. Let's talk about it. It might be the huge elephant in the room right now. We had multiple people talk about staffing. I've had it come up in many other conversations and meetings that I've had over, I'd say the last month or so. It's huge and I don't have an answer for it. We'll open it up. If anybody else, has anything that, any targeted methods that you're trying around staffing, staff retention, hiring staff. Anybody have any thoughts or ideas? Yeah, Susie, I would agree with you. It's many industries, not just after school. It's hard. I think, and I think it's hard too. I have been hearing that, there's various incentives within various industries, ways to get staff and retain staff. And I think it can sometimes be hard in after school to feel like you can compete with something like that. Or even I know that there's been conversations around in the summertime, getting school day teachers to stick around and help in the summer can be hard, right? You need to kind of incentivize that for the teacher, mostly in the form of a good wage, good hourly rate that you can pay them, but that can be hard given your budget. That's some of the things that I've been hearing. So I know that with some of the additional funding that is coming into the state down to programs, that some programs are trying to focus on that competitive wage for teachers to get them to stick around for the summer. And then also getting creative, if you can, within your budget, thinking about some small incentives that you can have for staff, maybe a end of summer bonus. You can tell them upfront, if if you stick around and last the whole summer, then there's a little monetary incentive that'll come your way, or recruiting a friend, if telling your current staff, if you refer somebody to come and work in the program and they make it through the hiring process and make it through the summer, then you can get a little bonus. But again, I know that that's so hard with budgets. That might be like, we're talking about having to like penny pinch out of your budget to try to make something like that happen. And with funding restrictions, it may not be easy to do, but those are some of the things that I've heard. Anybody else have any ideas?
Oh, hey, Holly, I just want to chime in. Even thinking about my own personal experience, I remember wanting to work in these after school programs and things like that, because I felt like it would be something I would really love and enjoy doing. And I also felt like I had skills to offer in that. And so I know that a lot of times it's like money, money, money. But I know that a lot of people, especially like the college students that you're looking for, that a lot of people draw from, they don't necessarily, money is a huge aspect, but if they see that it's something fun, that they have something that they can give, if it will be related to something that they want to do in the future, I feel like that's a big draw to a lot of people too. And that can be a good marketing aspect.
I love that, Kristen. I think that's huge. Tony, even thinking about and it could be conversations that you have with your current staff, even that can help you with that marketing of what goals do they want to have over the summer, or what skills do they want to walk away from, and making sure that you build into that opportunities for them to do that. And you can then advertise that, right? When you're recruiting new staff, you can say, like, these are some of the skills that you're going to learn. I love that, because I agree. It's hard too after a year like we've had. I'm seeing a lot in the chat. I relate for sure, of just the burnout or being tired, that it might not be the skills they can gain. It might not be the money they could earn. It could be the sheer fact of I need more sleep over my summer or whatever. So yeah, this is a very multifaceted issue that we're all facing going into this summer.
Goes back to what James said at the very beginning. A lot of teachers that we've relied on to support our programs each summer and to earn some extra money are done. They just need a break. And that's what we're hearing. And again, it's not just local, it's statewide, nationwide. And it might also make us think a little differently about how we could possibly use community partners, maybe community partners that we haven't thought of before, or that we hadn't considered because, things were run a certain way before COVID in the summer. So how can we explore other opportunities there?
I love that. Or how can they help us be flexible? So would there be opportunities of, normally you would come in 4 days, 5 days a week, with our community partners coming in, if you could come in 2 days a week.
Exactly.
So what kind of flexibility do you have? That this Jamboard is great in helping you start to think about that. What are the flexibilities that you have versus what are sort of the hard and fast? We have to have our an adult per 10 to 12 youth ratios and whatnot.
Salt Lake, I believe. Anybody here from Salt Lake? Salt Lake City School District has the staffing issue as well. So they have established summer program hubs. So they're not having programs at all their elementary schools. They're having them at like 3 or 4. And then the students are coming together at a hub. That way they don't have to staff every school program. So a little bit, it just looks and feels a little different, but we want to support you. And if we think of anything else or hear of other states or other communities that are doing anything outside the box, we will certainly pass those along to you and share those ideas.
I think that this is a great conversation to keep brainstorming with your out of school time specialist as well. I think they want to be a great resource for all of you, and they have great support from each other. So collectively and actually everybody at Utah After School Network, we want to keep collaborating on your behalf. So let us know what you're coming across so that we can help. In our last couple minutes, I wanted to throw up, here is our certificate of participation. So if you wanted to get a certificate for joining us today, the steps are written on there, QR code, or you can email certificate@utahafterschool.org. And then I also wanted to just go back to, here's our whole summer at a glance. We just finished part 3 of our planning time together. We look forward to seeing you all again on August 3rd for our reflection piece of this data planning portion. But then also really want to put a huge plug in. We're coming into 4 really awesome enrichment sessions that are going to kick off on June 8th with Chaz Pounder on lessons learned from the outdoors. And you can see the rest of our topics here as well. They're always Tuesdays at noon. So we hope that you'll be able to join us for these upcoming sessions. And if you miss it, they're all posted on our website. So you can go back and check them out. Invite your staff to join you in reviewing them or coming in person as well. Lisa and I will stick around if you have any additional questions. But with that, we want to thank you all for joining us today. And maybe you're feeling like you're leaving with more questions than answers, and that's okay. We are here to support you. So definitely reach out or stick around right now. And thanks again.